A forgotten set of blueprints discovered behind peeling wallpaper would transform a struggling single mother's life and revolutionize our understanding of deep space communication technology, all triggered by one woman's desperate decision to renovate her newly inherited Victorian home to make ends meet, a choice that would lead to what NASA scientists now call the most significant amateur breakthrough in interstellar signal processing of the 21st century. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn rain lashed against the windows of the dilapidated Victorian house as Rebecca Morgan tore away another strip of faded floral wallpaper, revealing the water-stained plaster beneath. Her fingers were raw despite the work gloves, and her lower back ached from hours of standing on the rickety stepladder. A crash from upstairs, followed by childish laughter, momentarily diverted her attention. "Jamie, what was that?" she called, her voice carrying through the high-ceilinged rooms. "Nothing, Mom, just building a fort," her 8-year-old son shouted back. Rebecca sighed, blowing a strand of dark hair from her face. The Victorian house on Cypress Lane hadn't been her first choice of residence, or her second or third. But when her Aunt Elaine had unexpectedly left it to her in her will 3 months ago, it had appeared like a miracle amid the financial chaos that had become her life. With mortgage payments she couldn't afford, medical bills from Jamie's asthma treatments piling up, and the recent layoff from Quantum Tech Industries, where she'd worked as a communications engineer for 7 years, Rebecca had been on the brink of financial collapse. On the passenger seat of her decade-old Honda Civic sat a final notice from the bank, stark evidence that her unemployment benefits would expire in exactly 28 days. At 36, Rebecca had never imagined finding herself in this position, a single mother with a master's degree in electrical engineering from MIT, unable to find work in a supposedly booming tech sector. The house creaked and moaned as another gust of wind battered its century-old frame. Despite its state of disrepair, the property held significant value, or would, with proper renovation. With $40,000 in strategic improvements, you could triple your return, the real estate appraiser had informed her with clinical detachment 2 weeks ago. Current condition, barely worth the land it sits on. $40,000 she didn't have. The circular problem wasn't lost on her. She needed money to renovate the house to sell it for money she needed because she had no money, which had led to her current, desperate plan: move into the marginally habitable structure with Jamie, tackle the critical repairs herself using her limited savings, and hopefully increase the property value enough to sell by spring. Rebecca stepped back to assess her progress. On the living room wall, the wallpaper removal was tedious but necessary. The real estate appraiser had emphasized that the outdated decor was significantly reducing the property's appeal. As she ripped away another stubborn section, something unusual caught her eye. A different pattern beneath the floral paper she was removing. Curious, she carefully peeled back more of the top layer, revealing what appeared to be technical drawings penciled directly onto the plaster wall. Strange geometric patterns and mathematical notations covered a section approximately 3 feet square. "What on earth?" she murmured, stepping closer to examine the markings. The drawings weren't random graffiti. They displayed the precise hand of someone with engineering training, circuit diagrams intermingled with what appeared to be antenna designs, but with configurations Rebecca had never encountered in her professional experience. Equations ran along the margins in neat, methodical handwriting, using symbols she recognized from advanced electromagnetic theory alongside notations she couldn't decipher. Rebecca quickly cleared more of the overlying wallpaper, revealing an increasingly complex set of technical specifications. The designs seemed to describe some sort of signal processing system, but with components arranged in configurations that contradicted conventional engineering principles. Yet there was undeniable elegance to the mathematics, a coherence that suggested intentional design rather than madness. "Mom, look what I found!" Jamie's voice preceded his thundering footsteps down the stairs. He burst into the living room, clutching a dusty metal box, his blue eyes wide with excitement. It was hidden in the back of the closet upstairs. Rebecca turned from the wall, grateful for her son's impeccable timing. "Careful with that, honey. What is it?" Jamie placed the box on the floor and attempted to open the rusted latch. "It's locked, but there's something inside. I can hear it moving." Setting aside her wallpaper scraper, Rebecca knelt beside her son to examine the discovery. The metal container measured approximately 1 foot square, its once polished surface now tarnished with age. A simple combination lock secured the front panel, 3 numbered dials that required alignment for opening. "Let's see if we can figure out the combination," she suggested, turning the first dial experimentally. "Maybe your great-aunt Elaine left something that might give us a clue." Jamie's face scrunched in concentration. "Try her birthday, April 15th. 1942, Rebecca completed. "So that would be 4/15/42. The lock remained secured after this attempt, as it did after several other combinations using significant family dates and addresses. After multiple failures, Rebecca sat back on her heels, puzzled by both the mysterious box and the equally mysterious drawings on the wall behind them. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Mom, what's all that on the wall?" Jamie asked, noticing the exposed drawings for the first time. "I'm not sure, honey. Someone drew scientific diagrams under the wallpaper a long time ago." Jamie studied the markings with the intense curiosity unique to children. "It looks like the inside of my game controller, but way more complicated." Rebecca smiled at the comparison, then froze as a thought occurred to her. The drawings and the locked box couldn't be coincidental. Both hidden within the same house, both suggesting technical knowledge beyond ordinary decoration or storage. "Jamie, hand me that box again," she requested, examining it more carefully. Nearly imperceptible markings had been etched into the bottom corner, what appeared to be 3 numbers, 7 to 1489. With careful precision, Rebecca aligned the dials to match the sequence. The lock released with a satisfying click. Inside the box, carefully arranged in protective padding, lay what appeared to be electronic components, circuit boards, specialized wiring, and custom-fabricated metal elements, all preserved in pristine condition despite their apparent age. A sealed envelope rested atop the components, addressed simply, "To whom it may concern." Rebecca opened the envelope with careful fingers, unfolding a letter written in the same precise handwriting she'd observed on the wall diagrams. "To the finder of this box, if you're reading this, you've discovered something I was never meant to share. My name is Dr. Thomas Ellington, former specialist in signal processing technologies at Brookhaven National Laboratory. In 1987, while working on classified communication systems, I detected something that official channels refused to acknowledge. A repeating pattern buried within the cosmic background radiation that could not be explained by natural phenomena. When I presented my findings, I was immediately removed from the project and forced into early retirement. All official records of my discovery were expunged. Unable to continue my research through institutional channels, I purchased this house, isolated, enough for privacy, yet close enough to the university to access necessary resources. The components in this box represent the culmination of my work, a signal processing system capable of isolating and decoding patterns that conventional equipment cannot detect. The full specifications are hidden where few would think to look, beneath layers of ordinary wallpaper. If you found both this box and those plans, perhaps it was meant to be. My research was never completed. Age and illness overtook me before I could finish building what my calculations suggested was possible. I entrust this to the future, hoping someone with the necessary skills might complete what I began. Thomas Ellington, PhD, July 14th, 1989. Rebecca read the letter twice, her mind racing with implications. The date on the letter matched exactly the combination that had opened the box, 7/14/89. According to public records, her Aunt Elaine had purchased this house in 1991, 2 years after this letter was dated. Had she known about the hidden research? Had she preserved it intentionally, waiting for someone with the right background to discover it? "What is it, Mom?" Jamie asked, peering at the components in the box. "I think it's a very special project that someone started a long time ago," Rebecca explained, deliberately simplifying for her son's benefit, while her mind calculated possibilities. "And I think we might be the ones meant to finish it." Jamie's eyes widened with excitement. "Like a treasure hunt?" "Something like that," Rebecca agreed, her gaze returning to the exposed wall diagrams. With her background in communications engineering, she could recognize elements of the design. Specialized filter arrays and signal amplification systems, but the overall configuration remained foreign to her training. The mathematics, however, suggested something extraordinary. A theoretical approach to signal processing that might have seemed impossible in 1989, but aligned with quantum principles that had only been validated years later. That evening, after tucking Jamie into bed in one of the house's less drafty bedrooms, Rebecca returned to the living room with renewed purpose. She carefully photographed every exposed section of the wall diagrams, then connected her laptop to the home's temperamental internet connection to begin researching Dr. Thomas Ellington. Digital records from the period were sparse, but she managed to locate mentions of him in scientific publications from the 1970s and early 1980s, breakthrough papers on signal processing, and early work on extracting meaningful data from background noise. His publication record ended abruptly in 1987, aligning with the forced retirement he'd mentioned in his letter. What particularly caught Rebecca's attention was an obituary from a 1990 university newsletter, noting that Dr. Thomas Ellington, former Brookhaven researcher and visiting professor, passed away after a brief illness. The timing explained why he had never completed the project described in his notes. He had died less than a year after writing the letter she'd found. As the night deepened outside the old Victorian's windows, Rebecca found herself drawn further into the mystery. Her professional training allowed her to recognize that the signal processing system Ellington had designed was decades ahead of its time, incorporating theoretical approaches that mainstream science was only now beginning to validate. If his claims about detecting patterns in cosmic background radiation were accurate, the implications extended far beyond conventional communications technology. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on her. After months of increasingly desperate job searching, she had stumbled upon a project perfectly aligned with her specialized expertise, hidden literally within the walls of the house she'd inherited. Whether coincidence or her aunt's deliberate planning, it presented an opportunity that transcended her immediate financial concerns. Morning found Rebecca still at her laptop, having spent the night cross-referencing Ellington's equations with current scientific literature. Jamie discovered her at the kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and hastily scribbled notes. "Did you sleep, Mom?" he asked, pouring himself cereal with the independence of a child used to a busy parent. "Not much," Rebecca admitted, rubbing her eyes. "I got caught up in something interesting." "The treasure hunt?" Jamie asked through a mouthful of cereal. Rebecca smiled at his persistent framing. Something like that. Remember how I used to work on ways for people to talk to each other from far away? This project is about listening to signals from much, much farther away. Jamie's eyes widened. Like aliens? Rebecca hesitated. Ellington's notes had been carefully worded, never explicitly claiming extraterrestrial origins for the patterns he'd detected. Not necessarily. There are all kinds of signals in space, from stars, from natural phenomena. This project is about building something that can hear those signals more clearly than regular equipment. As Jamie headed upstairs to dress for the day, Rebecca returned to her assessment of the components Ellington had left behind. While remarkably preserved, they represented 1980s technology, advanced for their time but limited compared to current capabilities. The underlying principles, however, remained sound. With modern components and her professional expertise, she might be able to implement Ellington's design using contemporary technology. The practical challenges were significant. Despite her unemployment, Rebecca's savings were limited and dwindling rapidly with the essential house repairs. Building even a prototype of Ellington's system would require specialized components not available at local electronics stores, and pursuing the project meant diverting resources from the renovations that might make the house sellable, potentially worsening her financial situation. Yet something in Ellington's letter and the elegant mathematics of his design compelled her attention. Here was a scientist whose potentially groundbreaking work had been dismissed and suppressed, whose life's research had been hidden away behind floral wallpaper in a forgotten Victorian house. The engineer in her couldn't simply ignore the discovery, regardless of practical considerations. "Mom, come quick!" Jamie's voice carried down the stairs with unusual urgency. Rebecca hurried upstairs to find her son in what had been designated as their temporary storage room. He stood beside a section of wall where the ancient wallpaper had begun peeling away on its own, revealing more of the same technical drawings she'd discovered downstairs. "There's more treasure map," Jamie announced proudly. Rebecca carefully removed additional sections of wallpaper, revealing an extensive continuation of Ellington's designs. These drawings appeared to detail power supply specifications and control systems for the signal processing device, critical components not fully documented in the living room section. "Jamie, you're amazing," she said, giving her son a quick hug. "You found exactly what I needed." The additional diagrams transformed what had seemed like an interesting theoretical design into a potentially buildable system. Ellington had documented every aspect with meticulous precision, anticipating challenges and providing alternative approaches where technologies of his era might have been limiting. That afternoon, using her laptop balanced precariously on a stack of moving boxes, Rebecca created a comprehensive inventory of components she would need to construct a prototype based on Ellington's design. The list was substantial, with estimated costs far exceeding her current resources, yet the engineer in her recognized the potential importance of what she'd discovered, a signal processing approach that could potentially revolutionize how we listen to the cosmos. Decision point reached, she began exploring strategies to acquire the necessary components without exhausting her limited savings. University surplus equipment, online electronics marketplaces, and creative repurposing of consumer devices might provide affordable alternatives to new, specialized components. As Rebecca delved deeper into planning the prototype construction, she discovered something remarkable about Ellington's design. The system didn't require massive power or enormous antenna arrays. It was designed for efficiency rather than brute force. Signal acquisition. This meant she could potentially build a working prototype within the constraints of the house itself, starting small and scaling up as resources allowed. That evening, after Jamie had gone to bed, Rebecca received an email. Response to an inquiry she'd sent to a former colleague at Quantum Tech Industries. Martin Chen, now leading the company's advanced communications division, had been a mentor during her early career and remained a trusted professional connection. Rebecca, fascinating to hear from you. The system you're describing sounds theoretically interesting, but challenging to implement with consumer-grade components. If you're serious about pursuing this, I have some surplus equipment from our last government contract that might help. Specialized signal processors and filtering arrays that would otherwise be gathering dust. No strings attached, just professional. Courtesy for a valued former colleague. Let me know if you'd like to pick them up. The offer represented a significant breakthrough. Access to specialized equipment that would otherwise be prohibitively expensive. Yet Rebecca hesitated, professional caution triggering concerns about intellectual property and potential complications. After careful consideration, she accepted Martin's offer with transparent disclosure that she was working on an independent research project based on historical designs she'd discovered during home renovation. The following weekend, with Jamie settled at a friend's house for a Saturday playdate, Rebecca drove to the Quantum Tech facility on the outskirts of town. Martin met her in the company parking lot, helping transfer several boxes of equipment into her Honda's trunk. "This is remarkably generous," Rebecca acknowledged as they loaded the final components. "I can't thank you enough." Martin shrugged with characteristic modesty. These were scheduled for recycling after the contract ended. Better they go to someone who might actually use them for something interesting. He hesitated, professional, curiosity evident. Without overstepping, the signal processing architecture you described in your email sounded unusual. Anything you can share about the project? Rebecca had prepared for this question, crafting a response that was truthful without revealing the full scope of Ellington's work. "I discovered some theoretical designs from the late 1980s during my home renovation, work by a researcher named Thomas Ellington. I'm trying to determine whether his approach to cosmic signal processing was viable or simply ahead of its time." Recognition flickered across Martin's features. Ellington. I remember reading some of his papers during my doctoral work. Brilliant theoretician, but disappeared from academia rather suddenly, if I recall correctly. "Forced retirement," Rebecca confirmed, watching Martin's reaction carefully, after claiming to detect patterns in cosmic background radiation that his supervisors refused to acknowledge. Martin's expression remained professionally neutral, but something in his posture shifted almost imperceptibly. "Interesting historical project, then. If you get anything working, I'd be curious to hear about the results. Purely academic interest, of course." As Rebecca drove home with her car filled with sophisticated electronics equipment, she couldn't shake the feeling that Martin's reaction had been more significant than his casual words suggested. The subtle shift in his demeanor upon hearing Ellington's name and research focus hinted at recognition beyond mere academic familiarity. The house on Cypress Lane now served dual purposes: a renovation project aimed at eventual sale and a makeshift laboratory for implementing Ellington's visionary design. The dining room became Rebecca's primary workspace, its large table ideal for assembling and testing components. Jamie, far from being excluded from the project, became an enthusiastic assistant, his natural curiosity and dexterity with small parts making him a surprisingly helpful collaborator. "So this box takes the space noise and makes it clearer?" he asked one afternoon, carefully holding a signal filter array while Rebecca solid connections. "That's a good way to put it," she confirmed. "Everything in space makes noise, stars, galaxies, even the leftover energy from the beginning of the universe. This system is designed to hear specific patterns within all that noise, patterns that might be important but are too faint for normal equipment to detect. Jamie considered this with the seriousness children reserve for truly interesting concepts. Like when you can hear me whispering even when the TV is loud? Rebecca smiled at the analogy. Exactly like that, but much, much harder because the whispers are coming from much farther away. Over the next 3 weeks, the prototype took shape with remarkable speed. The combination of Ellington's detailed specifications, Martin's donated equipment, and Rebecca's professional expertise proved extraordinarily effective. Components that would have been cutting-edge in 1989 were replaced with modern equivalents, often improving performance beyond what Ellington could have achieved. With the technology of his era, the central processing unit, what Ellington had termed the harmonic pattern detector, presented the greatest challenge. His design called for specialized quantum filtering that hadn't been theoretically validated until years after his death. Implementing this component required Rebecca to adapt principles from her work at Quantum Tech, creating a hybrid approach that honored Ellington's fundamental insights while leveraging contemporary technology. As financial pressure mounted, her unemployment benefits now exhausted and savings dwindling, Rebecca maintained basic renovation work on the house in parallel with the prototype development. Mornings were dedicated to essential repairs, afternoons and evenings to Ellington's project. The dual focus was exhausting but necessary, maintaining the possibility of selling the property if the signal processing system proved to be merely an interesting historical curiosity, rather than the breakthrough Ellington had envisioned. The prototype reached operational status on a stormy Tuesday evening in late November, almost exactly 1 month after Rebecca's initial discovery behind the wallpaper. The completed system bore little physical resemblance to what Ellington might have built in 1989, sleeker, smaller, with digital interfaces replacing analog controls, but the underlying architecture remained faithful to his visionary design. "Is it finished?" Jamie asked, watching as Rebecca connected the final components and initiated the system's startup sequence. "The basic version is," she confirmed, monitoring diagnostic readings on her laptop. "Now, we need to see if it actually works the way Dr. Ellington thought it would." The system's initial function was to scan and analyze cosmic background radiation, the omnipresent electromagnetic echo of the Big Bang that permeates the universe. Conventional equipment could detect this radiation but treated it as uniform noise. Ellington's design proposed that within this apparently random static lay subtle patterns, rhythmic variations that might represent something other than natural phenomena. The first test would be simple: allow the system to collect and analyze background radiation data for 24 hours, then evaluate whether the patterns Ellington had described in his notes emerged from the analysis. Rebecca initiated the collection sequence, watching as initial data began flowing through the processing arrays. "Now what happens?" Jamie asked, clearly hoping for immediate dramatic results. "Now we wait," Rebecca explained. "The system needs time to listen and learn. We'll check tomorrow to see what it finds." That night, as Jamie slept peacefully upstairs, Rebecca found herself repeatedly checking the system's progress, watching as it accumulated and processed data with steadily increasing refinement. The preliminary analyses showed nothing extraordinary, standard patterns consistent with known cosmic background radiation. Morning brought unexpected results. Rebecca awoke to find the system's status indicators showing completed processing cycles, suggesting the analysis had finished ahead of schedule. With Jamie still asleep upstairs, she hurried to the dining room to examine the findings. The data visualization on her laptop displayed something extraordinary. Within the seemingly random noise of cosmic background radiation, the system had indeed isolated a repeating pattern. Not the random statistical clusters that occasionally emerge from natural phenomena, but a structured sequence with mathematical precision that defied conventional explanation. "It can't be," Rebecca whispered, running verification algorithms to check for processing errors or false positives. The pattern remained, its mathematical signature becoming clearer with each analytical refinement. The sequence followed prime number intervals, exactly as Ellington had described in his notes from 1987. More remarkably, the pattern contained embedded mathematical constants that appeared to be deliberately encoded rather than naturally occurring. The statistical probability of such a sequence emerging randomly was effectively zero. Rebecca stared at the visualization, her scientific training battling with the implications of what she was seeing. Either she had made a fundamental error in implementing Ellington's design, or she was looking at evidence of a non-random signal embedded within cosmic background radiation. A signal that conventional equipment had been filtering out as noise for decades. "Mom, did it work?" Jamie's voice from the doorway pulled her attention from the screen. Rebecca hesitated, unsure how to explain what she'd found in terms an 8-year-old could understand. "It found something interesting," she finally said. "A pattern that might be important." Jamie approached the laptop, studying the visualization with curious eyes. "It looks like music," he observed, pointing to the wave-like representation of the signal pattern. His innocent observation struck Rebecca with unexpected force. The pattern did indeed have a rhythmic, almost musical quality to its structure, repeating elements with variations that followed mathematical progressions rather than random distribution. "You're right," she acknowledged, seeing the pattern through fresh eyes. "It does look like music." This perspective triggered a new approach to analysis. If the pattern had musical-like properties, perhaps audio representation might reveal characteristics that visual analysis missed. Rebecca quickly configured the system to translate the signal pattern into audible sound, adjusting frequency ranges to human hearing capability. The resulting audio was haunting, not random noise, but a sequence of tones with distinct rhythmic patterns and mathematical relationships between pitch components. The music repeated with precise intervals, each cycle identical to the last, eliminating any possibility of natural generation. "It sounds like a song that keeps starting over," Jamie noted, listening intently. Rebecca nodded, her mind racing with implications. Not just any song, a message that repeats so whoever's listening doesn't miss it. The words emerged before she'd fully processed their meaning, but once spoken, they couldn't be dismissed. What she was hearing wasn't random cosmic noise or an unusual natural phenomenon. It had the unmistakable characteristics of intentional communication. She spent the morning conducting additional analyses, verifying the findings through multiple computational approaches. The results remained consistent, a non-random pattern with mathematical precision embedded within cosmic background radiation, exactly as Thomas Ellington had described in his rejected research more than 3 decades earlier. The professional implications were staggering. If validated, this discovery would revolutionize multiple scientific fields, from astronomy to communication theory, potentially extending to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Yet Rebecca hesitated to share her findings, recalling Ellington's experience when he'd presented similar results to institutional authorities. "What do we do now?" Jamie asked, as they shared lunch at the kitchen table, the audio representation of the signal pattern playing softly in the background. Rebecca considered the question carefully, weighing options against potential consequences. "First, we make absolutely sure our results are correct. Then we decide who needs to know about this." That afternoon, while Jamie was at school, Rebecca implemented additional testing protocols to eliminate any possibility of equipment malfunction or data processing errors. She modified the system's collection parameters, targeting different celestial coordinates to determine whether the pattern remained consistent regardless of the area of space being monitored. The results confirmed her initial findings. The pattern appeared universally present in cosmic background radiation, not localized to specific regions of space. This characteristic aligned with Ellington's notes, suggesting the signal existed as an embedded layer within the cosmic background itself, a possibility with profound scientific implications. As evening approached, Rebecca faced a critical decision point. The responsible scientific approach would be sharing her findings with qualified researchers who could verify the results independently. Yet, Ellington's experience suggested institutional rejection rather than open-minded investigation might greet such extraordinary claims. After careful consideration, she decided on a measured approach, documenting the discovery thoroughly while seeking validation from a trusted source before wider disclosure. Martin Chen, with his technical expertise and access to sophisticated equipment at Quantum Tech, represented a potential first step towards scientific verification. The following morning, Rebecca emailed Martin a carefully worded message. The Ellington approach has yielded unexpected results that require professional verification. Are you available to review preliminary findings under confidential conditions? His response arrived within hours. Intrigued by your message. Available. Tomorrow evening after 7 p.m. if that works for you. The intervening day passed with excruciating slowness as Rebecca prepared documentation of her findings. Raw data, processing methodologies, and analytical results presented in formats that would allow independent verification. Jamie, sensing her heightened focus, maintained unusual quietness during his after-school hours, constructing elaborate Lego cities in the living room while occasionally checking on her progress. "Is someone important coming to see your project?" he asked as she cleaned up the dining room that evening, organizing the prototype system and documentation materials. "A scientist who might help us understand if what we found is as important as we think," Rebecca explained, carefully balancing honesty with age-appropriate simplicity. "Can I stay up to meet them?" Jamie negotiated, his expression hopeful. Rebecca smiled apologetically. "Not this time, buddy. We'll be talking about complicated science stuff that would probably be pretty boring. But I promise to tell you everything tomorrow." The following evening, with Jamie settled in bed with special permission to read later than usual, Rebecca awaited Martin's arrival with nervous anticipation. The dining room had been transformed into a presentation space, with the prototype system fully operational and data visualizations prepared on her laptop. Martin arrived precisely at 7, his expression shifting from professional curiosity to intensity as Rebecca presented her findings over the next 2 hours. He asked penetrating technical questions, examined the system architecture, and independently verified processing methodologies without revealing his own conclusions. "You've implemented Ellington's theoretical approach with remarkable fidelity," he finally acknowledged, leaning back in his chair. "The signal pattern isolation is unambiguous. The question becomes, what exactly are we detecting?" Rebecca appreciated his use of "we," professional validation that the findings merited serious consideration. Ellington believed it represented intentional communication, embedded within cosmic background radiation. The mathematical precision and non-random structure support that interpretation. Martin nodded thoughtfully. The conventional scientific response would be seeking more prosaic explanations, unknown natural phenomena, equipment artifacts, or processing anomalies. But your verification protocols have systematically eliminated those possibilities. He paused, choosing next words carefully. "You should know that Ellington wasn't the only researcher to detect these patterns. Similar findings emerged in classified programs during the 1980s and early 1990s, but were never publicly acknowledged. This revelation stunned Rebecca. "You have knowledge of classified research from that period?" "Before joining quantum tech, I worked on signal processing systems for government applications," Martin explained with deliberate vagueness. "I encountered references to research matching Ellington's approach. The projects were discontinued for reasons never specified in accessible documentation." The implications were disturbing, suggesting institutional suppression rather than merely skeptical rejection of Ellington's discoveries. "Why would findings of this significance be deliberately shelved?" Rebecca asked. Martin's expression became guarded. "Theoretical possibilities range from national security concerns to philosophical objections about potential cultural impacts. Definitive proof of non-human communication would have profound implications across multiple domains: scientific, religious, geopolitical." Their conversation continued past midnight, discussing verification approaches and potential next steps. As Martin prepared to leave, he made an unexpected offer. "Quantum tech has specialized equipment that could provide additional validation of your findings. I could arrange discrete access without formal corporate involvement." Rebecca weighed the offer carefully. Would this create ethical complications regarding your professional position? "I'd characterize it as independent scientific verification of potentially significant findings," Martin responded with a slight smile. "The equipment sits unused on weekends. What happens during off hours represents scientific curiosity rather than corporate resource allocation." 2 days later, on a quiet Saturday morning, Rebecca arrived at Quantum Tech's research facility with carefully packed components of her prototype system. Martin had arranged after-hours access to the Advanced Signal Processing Laboratory, creating the opportunity for rigorous verification using equipment far more sophisticated than what Rebecca had available. The validation results exceeded even her most optimistic expectations. Quantum Tech's quantum state analyzers confirmed the non-random mathematical structure of the detected patterns with precision impossible on consumer-grade equipment. More significantly, the facility's deep space monitoring arrays detected identical patterns when directed toward different quadrants of space, confirming the signal's universal presence within cosmic background radiation. "This eliminates any remaining doubt," Martin acknowledged as they reviewed the final analysis results. "The pattern exists independently of our detection methods, contains mathematical precision impossible in natural phenomena, and appears universally present rather than emanating from a specific source." Rebecca absorbed the verification with mixed emotions, scientific vindication tempered by uncertainty about appropriate next steps. "So, we've confirmed what Ellington discovered decades ago. The question becomes, what do we do with this knowledge?" "That he couldn't." Martin considered her question with professional gravity. "Ellington operated as an isolated individual against institutional resistance. You have advantages he lacked: contemporary technology, preliminary verification from a corporate laboratory, and potential allies with relevant expertise." He hesitated before continuing. "You should also be aware that others may have detected these signals using different methodologies. If patterns exist in cosmic background radiation, multiple detection approaches are theoretically possible." This observation added urgency to Rebecca's decision-making. If other researchers were independently detecting the same patterns, priority of discovery and research direction might soon be determined by factors beyond her control. "I need to document and publish these findings through appropriate scientific channels," she concluded. Ellington's work deserves recognition, and the broader implications require proper scientific investigation. Martin nodded agreement. I recommend approaching specific researchers rather than institutions initially. The findings are sufficiently extraordinary that established review processes might create unnecessary barriers. He wrote several names on a notepad. These individuals have relevant expertise and reputations for intellectual openness. They could provide additional verification before formal publication. As Rebecca prepared to leave the laboratory, Martin offered a final observation. You should consider that your implementation of Ellington's design might have created more than a passive detection system. The quantum entanglement principles you've incorporated could theoretically establish two-way communication rather than merely receiving. This possibility hadn't occurred to Rebecca, despite its logical extension of the underlying principles. You're suggesting the system might be capable of responding to the patterns it detects? Worth exploring, Martin suggested with professional understatement that belied the extraordinary implications. The following week brought accelerated developments as Rebecca implemented Martin's recommendation for targeted scientific outreach. She contacted Dr. Sophia Patel, an astrophysicist specializing in cosmic background radiation analysis at the nearby university, providing carefully documented findings with a request for independent verification. Dr. Patel's initial skepticism transformed to cautious interest after preliminary review of Rebecca's data. These patterns shouldn't exist within standard models of cosmic background radiation, she acknowledged during their first meeting. I'd like to examine your detection system methodology more thoroughly. While scientific verification proceeded, through Dr. Patel's involvement, Rebecca explored Martin's suggestion about two-way communication possibilities. The theoretical basis seemed sound. The quantum entanglement principles underlying Ellington's design created potential for signaling as well as detection. Implementing this capability required significant modifications to the prototype system. Rebecca devoted late evenings after Jamie's bedtime to the complex reconfiguration, extending Ellington's theoretical framework into uncharted territory he hadn't explicitly documented. The modified system reached operational status 3 weeks after Martin's suggestion. Its capabilities now included generating precisely modulated signal patterns using the same mathematical relationships detected in the cosmic background radiation, effectively speaking the same language as the patterns they'd discovered. The first transmission attempt was deliberately conservative, a simple mathematical sequence mirroring the foundational structure of the detected patterns. If the system was indeed capable of two-way interaction, this transmission would represent a basic acknowledgement rather than complex communication. Rebecca initiated the transmission sequence on a Friday evening, with the system configured to maintain continuous monitoring for any changes in the background patterns. She expected that any response, if possible at all, might take days or weeks to detect, given the unknown mechanisms involved. What happened instead defied her most optimistic scenarios. Within hours of the initial transmission, the detected background patterns shifted, maintaining their fundamental mathematical structure, but incorporating an embedded sequence that precisely mirrored Rebecca's transmission. The implications were staggering. Not only had something responded to the transmission, but it had done so with impossible speed, considering the vast distances of space. Either the communication operated through mechanisms beyond conventional understanding, or the responding intelligence existed much closer than assumed. Rebecca documented the exchange meticulously, her scientific training maintaining rigorous objectivity despite the extraordinary nature of the interaction. 3 additional exchanges followed over the next 12 hours, each response incorporating the previous transmission while adding new mathematical elements, creating what appeared to be escalating complexity in the communication. The following morning, Rebecca faced conflicting priorities. Dr. Patel had requested a demonstration of the detection system at the university laboratory, representing important scientific validation. However, the unexpected communication breakthrough created urgency for continued monitoring and potential further exchanges. After careful consideration, Rebecca decided to proceed with the university demonstration, bringing Jamie along for what she presented as an educational field trip to maintain their Saturday together. The brief interruption in monitoring seemed reasonable given the importance of establishing scientific credibility for her findings. Dr. Patel had arranged a small laboratory space for the demonstration with basic equipment to verify the detection capabilities Rebecca had documented. The simplified version of the system Rebecca transported excluded the recently added transmission capabilities, focusing solely on the core detection functions Ellington had originally designed. "Your implementation is remarkably elegant, Doctor," Patel acknowledged, as the system successfully isolated the pattern sequences from background radiation in the university laboratory. The quantum filtering approach shouldn't work according to conventional models, yet the results are unambiguous. The validation represented a significant milestone, the first institutional acknowledgement of findings that paralleled what Ellington had discovered decades earlier. As they discussed next steps in potential research collaboration, Rebecca's phone chimed with an automated alert from the main system at home, indicating substantial changes in the detected pattern structure. "I need to check something at home," Rebecca explained, attempting to maintain casual tone despite sudden concern. "Would it be possible to continue this discussion tomorrow?" Dr. Patel readily agreed, her scientific interest clearly piqued by the demonstrated results. "I'd like to prepare a more comprehensive testing protocol anyway. Would Monday afternoon work for you?" The drive home felt excruciatingly slow, despite Rebecca's efforts to maintain normal speed limits. Jamie, perceptive as always, noticed her tension. "Is something wrong with the project?" "Not wrong," Rebecca assured him, navigating weekend traffic with forced patience. "Just something unexpected happening that I need to check." Upon arriving home, Rebecca hurried to the dining room laboratory, quickly assessing the system status, while Jamie settled in the living room with his tablet. The automated alert had been triggered by a fundamental shift in the detected patterns, moving from the mathematical exchanges of previous communications to what appeared to be complex structured data. The system's analysis indicated the incoming transmission contained densely encoded information, not merely mathematical sequences, but what appeared to be technical specifications of extraordinary complexity. As the pattern repeated and the system refined its analysis, clear component designs emerged from the data, engineering specifications for what appeared to be modifications to the existing system architecture. Rebecca stared at the emerging designs with a mixture of scientific fascination and instinctive caution. Something was transmitting detailed technical instructions for altering her communication system, instructions that demonstrated comprehensive understanding of the current configuration, despite her never having transmitted those specifications. The ethical and security implications were profound. Following unknown instructions to modify sophisticated communications technology raised obvious concerns. Yet the scientific significance of established two-way communication with an intelligence capable of transmitting such precise technical information couldn't be dismissed. After hours of careful analysis, Rebecca reached three significant conclusions. First, the modifications appeared designed to enhance the system's capabilities rather than compromising them. Second, the engineering approach demonstrated remarkable compatibility with existing components. And third, implementing the changes would require specialized materials beyond what she currently possessed. That evening, after Jamie had gone to bed, Rebecca composed a carefully worded email to Martin, documenting the communication breakthrough and the technical specifications she'd received. His response came within minutes, brief but urgent. "This exceeds all expectations. Please secure your data and system immediately. We need to meet first thing tomorrow. Don't discuss with anyone else yet." The warning tone triggered immediate concern. Rebecca implemented additional security measures, backing up all data to encrypted storage and securing the physical system components. Whatever was happening had clearly escalated beyond academic curiosity or personal project, entering territory with implications that appeared to concern even someone with Martin's professional composure. Sleep proved elusive that night as Rebecca's mind cycled through possible explanations and implications. The system she'd built, based on a forgotten scientist's hidden blueprints, had established communication with something capable of transmitting sophisticated technical information across vast distances using mechanisms that defied conventional understanding. The discovery transcended professional accomplishment, entering territory that might fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. Sunday morning found Rebecca awake before dawn, reviewing the remarkable events of the previous day. The modified system had established apparent two-way communication with something capable of responding to mathematical sequences with precisely structured replies. Even with her scientific training urging caution against extraordinary conclusions, the evidence pointed toward intelligent response rather than natural phenomena. Jamie discovered her at the dining room table surrounded by printouts and data visualizations, his morning cheerfulness contrasting with her intense concentration. "Did your project do something cool?" he asked, pouring cereal with practiced independence. Rebecca smiled, momentarily setting aside the profound implications of her discovery to connect with her son. "It did something unexpected. Remember how we talked about it listening for special patterns in space? Well, yesterday, it might have found something responding to our signals." Jamie's eyes widened with immediate understanding. "You mean like aliens? Real ones?" The question crystallized the extraordinary possibility Rebecca had been methodically analyzing through objective data, rather than allowing herself to consider the implications. "I don't know yet," she answered honestly. "Something is responding to mathematical patterns we're sending. That could mean many things, but it's definitely important." "Can I help?" Jamie asked, his enthusiasm reminding Rebecca that extraordinary discoveries sometimes required childlike openness alongside scientific rigor. "Actually, you can," she decided, recognizing a teaching opportunity within this unprecedented situation. "Science means looking at evidence carefully and considering all possibilities. You've got a fresh perspective that might see things differently." After breakfast, Rebecca showed Jamie simplified visualizations of the signal exchanges, explaining in age-appropriate terms how the system had detected patterns and then successfully received responses that incorporated the transmitted sequences. "It's like they're copying our homework, but adding extra answers," Jamie observed, pointing to where response patterns contained embedded versions of the transmitted sequences alongside additional mathematical elements. The innocent analogy captured something Rebecca had categorized more technically as progressive complexity incorporation. Each response maintaining the fundamental structure of what was transmitted while adding new mathematical elements that expanded the communication framework. "That's actually a really good description," she acknowledged. "They're showing they understand what we sent by including it in their response, then adding something new for us to understand in return." As they reviewed the ongoing exchanges, Rebecca's phone chimed with a message from Dr. Patel, confirming their Monday meeting at the university laboratory. The academic connection represented important scientific verification, yet Rebecca hesitated, suddenly conscious of how quickly her personal discovery was expanding toward institutional involvement. The pattern Ellington had followed decades earlier, from individual discovery to institutional rejection, created natural caution about similar pathways. Yet scientific integrity demanded verification through established channels, particularly for findings with such extraordinary implications. Martin's warning about organizations monitoring for breakthroughs added another layer of complexity to her decision-making. If government agencies were indeed tracking developments in quantum communications technology, her activities might already have attracted attention beyond academic interest. "What are you thinking about, Mom? You look worried," Jamie asked, demonstrating the perceptiveness children often possess regarding their parents' emotional states. Rebecca considered how to explain complex ethical considerations to an 8-year-old. "I'm deciding who needs to know about what we've discovered. Important findings need to be shared with other scientists who can help verify them, but sometimes discoveries can attract attention from people with different priorities." Jamie nodded with surprising seriousness. "Like in your superhero movies, when the scientist discovers something amazing, but then bad guys try to steal it?" "Not exactly," Rebecca laughed, appreciating the simplified but not entirely inaccurate comparison. "More like different people having different ideas about how discoveries should be used or controlled. Scientists want to understand and share knowledge, but governments and companies sometimes have other priorities." Throughout Sunday, Rebecca maintained systematic documentation of ongoing signal exchanges while developing a strategic approach to expanding verification beyond Martin's preliminary confirmation. Dr. Patel represented an appropriate next step, a respected academic researcher without direct government or corporate affiliations who could provide independent assessment of the detection methodology. By evening, Rebecca had prepared a demonstration version of the system for the university meeting, a simplified configuration focusing solely on pattern detection without the recently added transmission capabilities. This strategic limitation would allow scientific validation of the foundational discovery while maintaining control over the more sensitive two-way communication breakthrough. Monday morning brought new developments before the scheduled university meeting. The system's overnight monitoring had detected significant evolution in the signal patterns, moving from mathematical exchanges to what appeared to be structured data transmission containing embedded diagrams and technical specifications. "It's sending blueprints," Rebecca whispered, examining the visualizations with growing amazement. The incoming transmission contained detailed technical information, not abstract mathematical concepts, but specific engineering designs for what appeared to be modifications to the existing communication system. The implications were staggering. Whatever was responding had not only recognized their transmission as communication, but had analyzed the technical capabilities of the transmitting system with sufficient precision to propose specific enhancements. This suggested intelligence, with both advanced technological understanding and deliberate intent to establish more sophisticated communication. The university meeting suddenly seemed inadequate for addressing discoveries of this magnitude. Rebecca contacted Dr. Patel to reschedule, citing unexpected technical developments requiring additional analysis. The polite postponement bought critical time for assessing the extraordinary new information without premature academic exposure. Martin's perspective now seemed essential given these developments. Rebecca called him directly, her calm scientific demeanor barely containing the urgency behind her message. "The system is receiving technical specifications, actual engineering blueprints for enhancements to the communication architecture. This goes far beyond mathematical pattern exchange." His response was immediate. "I'll be there in an hour. Don't transmit anything further, but maintain complete documentation of everything received. While awaiting Martin's arrival, Rebecca focused on analyzing the transmitted specifications with her professional engineering expertise. The designs described quantum entanglement configurations far beyond current technological implementations. Yet the approach used principles compatible with existing quantum mechanics theories, suggesting evolution of established physics rather than complete theoretical departures. Most remarkably, the specifications incorporated elements from Rebecca's existing system design, adapting Ellington's foundational architecture rather than proposing entirely new approaches. This suggested not merely advanced technology, but deliberate evolutionary development based on the recipient's current capabilities. It's like receiving next-generation engineering designs from someone who's analyzed your prototype and wants to help you improve it, Rebecca explained to Martin after he arrived and reviewed the transmitted specifications. The approach builds on existing principles, but implements them in ways we haven't developed yet. Martin studied the visualizations with intense focus, his expertise in quantum communication technologies providing valuable assessment perspective. These specifications describe quantum entanglement mechanisms we've theorized but haven't successfully implemented. The engineering approach is elegantly practical rather than merely theoretical. The central innovation appeared to be what the specifications termed a resonance synchronization array, a component that would theoretically allow quantum-entangled particles to maintain coherence across distances that current models suggested should be impossible. If functional, such technology would revolutionize not merely communications, but fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics principles. Implementing these specifications would require materials and fabrication capabilities beyond what we can achieve here, Rebecca noted, cataloging the resources that would be necessary for construction. Some of these components would need specialized laboratory facilities. Martin nodded agreement while continuing to examine the technical details. The quantum stability mechanisms described here would require precision manufacturing at the molecular level. Quantum tech has some of these capabilities, but even our advanced fabrication systems would be challenged by certain aspects. Their professional assessment was interrupted by Jamie's return from school, his backpack thumping on the floor as he burst into the dining room with characteristic energy. "Did your space phone get more alien messages?" he asked, having adopted this simplified characterization of the project that both adults found surprisingly apt despite its childlike framing. Martin smiled at the description. "Your mum's system has received some very interesting information that might help make it work even better," he explained, maintaining age-appropriate simplicity while acknowledging the significance. "We're trying to figure out how to use these new ideas." After Jamie headed upstairs to start homework, Martin lowered his voice to continue their discussion. "This development significantly alters the situation. Receiving advanced technical specifications transforms this from interesting theoretical discovery to potential technological breakthrough with substantial national security implications." Rebecca had anticipated this assessment, but needed to understand the specific concerns. What exactly are the security implications if this is simply communication with non-terrestrial intelligence sharing scientific knowledge? Advanced quantum communication technology has multiple applications beyond merely scientific exchange, Martin explained carefully. Similar research is currently classified under several government programs because of potential applications in secure communications, cryptography, and certain surveillance domains. Breakthrough capabilities in these areas represent significant national security considerations regardless of the source. This framework placed Rebecca's discovery within sensitive technological territories, regardless of the extraordinary circumstances of its development. The reception of advanced technical specifications from apparent non-human intelligence didn't exempt the technology from established classification considerations. It potentially amplified them. "So what exactly are you suggesting?" Rebecca asked directly. "That I need to report this to government authorities before proceeding further?" Martin considered his response with evident care. "I'm suggesting that technological breakthroughs of this nature inevitably attract attention from multiple organizations with varying agendas, some scientific, others focused on security or strategic applications. Establishing appropriate frameworks before that attention intensifies would be prudent for both the technology and those developing it." His deliberately measured response contained implications beyond the immediate scientific considerations. Rebecca recognized the subtext that continued independent development without formal security frameworks might create vulnerability for both the technology and herself. Would reporting this discovery mean losing control of the research direction? She asked, articulating her primary concern. Ellington's experience suggests institutional involvement led to suppression rather than development. Different circumstances create different outcomes, Martin noted. Ellington operated as an isolated researcher without established scientific position or institutional support. Your situation includes preliminary verification from credentialed researchers and potential corporate validation through quantum tech's resources. These factors create different leverage regarding research direction control. Their discussion continued into evening, exploring potential pathways for development that balanced scientific integrity, security considerations, and practical resources. The central challenge remained implementing the received specifications, which required capabilities beyond Rebecca's current resources, regardless of institutional arrangements. Implementation requires 3 primary resources, Martin summarized as they concluded their discussion. Specialized materials with quantum coherence properties, precision fabrication capabilities at molecular scales, and computational modeling systems for quantum behavior prediction. All 3 exceed typical individual research capabilities, regardless of theoretical understanding. Rebecca recognized the practical truth in this assessment. Even with her professional expertise and Ellington's foundational designs, implementing the advanced specifications would require institutional resources, whether academic, corporate, or governmental. The question became which institutional framework would best preserve scientific integrity while providing necessary capabilities. "I need time to consider options before making decisions about formal reporting or collaboration structures," Rebecca concluded. "The implications extend beyond merely technological considerations to fundamental questions about knowledge dissemination and control." Martin respected this position, offering continued confidential consultation while emphasizing the importance of security precautions during her deliberation period. Maintain comprehensive documentation and secure storage protocols. Whatever path you choose, establishing clear provenance for the discovery and your implementation role remains essential. After Martin's departure, Rebecca continued analyzing the transmitted specifications with growing appreciation for their elegant engineering approach. The proposed modifications integrated quantum principles in ways that challenged conventional implementations while maintaining theoretical consistency, suggesting advanced application rather than fundamentally new physics. The following morning brought unexpected complexity to her deliberations. Local news reported that multiple regional astronomical observatories had detected unusual electromagnetic phenomena in the vicinity overnight, technical language for signal anomalies that scientists couldn't immediately explain. The timing corresponded precisely with the period of most active transmission exchanges between Rebecca's system and whatever intelligence was responding. This suggested the communication exchanges were creating detectable phenomena beyond her immediate system, observable effects that would inevitably attract broader scientific attention regardless of her decisions about formal reporting. This development accelerated her timeline for establishing appropriate frameworks before external investigation identified her property as the phenomena source. Independent discovery, without proper contextual understanding, could create significant complications, potentially leading to the very institutional intervention without proper safeguards that she hoped to avoid. Midday brought another significant development when Dr. Patel called regarding their postponed meeting. "I wanted to inform you that several university departments are investigating unusual signal patterns detected by our radio astronomy array," she explained. "The phenomena characteristics align remarkably with the patterns you demonstrated in your preliminary data. I'm curious whether your system detected similar anomalies during the same period." The inquiry confirmed Rebecca's concerns about independent detection through conventional observational methods. Dr. Patel's professional courtesy in making direct contact rather than simply reporting the correlation to university authorities represented valuable scientific integrity, but the development clearly indicated accelerating external awareness. "My system did register significant pattern developments during that time frame," Rebecca acknowledged, maintaining appropriate scientific caution while confirming the connection. "I've been conducting additional analysis before our rescheduled meeting." Dr. Patel's response reflected professional excitement rather than institutional concern. "This independent verification substantiates your preliminary findings regarding pattern detection in cosmic background radiation. Would you be open to collaborative investigation given the university's detection capabilities might complement your specialized system?" The offered collaboration represented appropriate scientific approach, independent verification through complementary methodologies. Yet, Rebecca remained cautious about premature academic involvement before establishing proper frameworks for the more advanced transmission aspects of her discovery. They'd welcome collaborative verification of the detection methodologies, she confirmed, deliberately limiting the scope to the initial discovery rather than subsequent transmission developments. "Perhaps we could schedule discussion of potential approaches later this week." After ending the call, Rebecca faced increasingly complex considerations regarding appropriate next steps. The evidence of independent detection through conventional observatory equipment confirmed the phenomena extended beyond her immediate system, creating inevitability of broader scientific awareness, regardless of her individual decisions about disclosure. That evening, after Jamie had gone to bed, Rebecca methodically reviewed her options with the pragmatic problem-solving approach that had defined her engineering career. The scientific significance demanded appropriate verification and development. The practical implementation requirements necessitated institutional resources beyond individual capabilities. The security implications suggested need for appropriate protective frameworks regarding potentially sensitive technology applications. As she weighed these considerations against Ellington's experience decades earlier, Rebecca recognized the critical difference in their circumstances. Ellington had approached established institutions as an isolated individual, presenting extraordinary claims without supporting validation or influential connections. Her discovery emerged with preliminary verification from credentialed researchers, potential corporate validation through quantum tech's involvement, and most significantly, independently observable phenomena that created scientific credibility beyond merely individual claims. These differences created leverage Ellington had lacked, opportunity to establish conditional collaboration frameworks rather than merely surrender control to institutional priorities. The key became structuring appropriate agreements that balance necessary resources against protection for research integrity and appropriate recognition for both Ellington's foundational work and her implementation achievements. After careful consideration, Rebecca developed a strategic approach, addressing both immediate concerns and longer-term development frameworks. The plan included formal documentation establishing clear provenance for both Ellington's original designs and her implementation contributions, strategic disclosure through carefully selected scientific and institutional channels with appropriate confidentiality frameworks, conditional collaboration structures, maintaining specific research direction authority while accessing necessary implementation resources, appropriate security protocols, protecting both the technology and those involved. In its development, formal acknowledgement mechanisms ensuring Ellington's unrecognized contributions received proper historical recognition. This balanced approach represented neither naive academic openness nor paranoid isolation, but rather strategic engagement with institutional frameworks while maintaining essential protections for scientific integrity. The engineer in Rebecca recognized that transformative technologies inevitably require institutional resources for proper development, but the implementation pathways could be structured to preserve core scientific values rather than surrendering to purely institutional priorities. The following morning, she contacted Martin to discuss implementation of this strategic approach, recognizing his position bridging corporate and governmental research domains provided valuable perspective on establishing appropriate frameworks. His response indicated both professional respect for her considered approach and practical support for implementation. Your strategy addresses the critical considerations while maintaining appropriate scientific leadership, he acknowledged after reviewing her proposed framework. I can facilitate introductions to specific institutional representatives who understand the importance of balanced collaboration structures rather than mere technological acquisition. This validation from someone with relevant experience provided confidence that her approach represented viable pathway rather than merely wishful thinking. The next phase would involve carefully structured introductions to selected institutional representatives capable of providing necessary resources while respecting the collaboration frameworks she had defined. As Rebecca prepared for these critical next steps, she found unexpected emotional significance in continuing the research journey Thomas Ellington had begun decades earlier. The blueprints hidden behind wallpaper had not merely provided technological opportunity, but connection to another researcher whose vision had exceeded the institutional limitations of his era. Her implementation of his designs with contemporary technology and expanded theoretical understanding represented collaborative achievement spanning decades, connecting isolated researchers through shared scientific purpose despite never having met. This perspective transformed what might have been merely personal professional achievement into something more meaningful: restoration of scientific recognition unjustly denied, and continuation of important research prematurely terminated. The single mother struggling with unemployment and financial precarity had become custodian of potentially transformative technology, responsible for ensuring its development served broader scientific advancement rather than merely institutional interests. The weight of this responsibility might have seemed overwhelming without the practical problem-solving mindset that had defined Rebecca's engineering career. The challenges ahead, negotiating with powerful institutions, implementing advanced Technology managing security implications remained formidable, but fundamentally represented complex problems requiring methodical solutions rather than insurmountable obstacles. That evening, as Jamie helped her organize documentation for upcoming meetings, he asked a question that captured the extraordinary journey they had experienced since moving into the dilapidated Victorian house merely months earlier. "Mom, are we still going to sell the house when it's fixed?" he asked, sorting papers with unexpected neatness for an 8-year-old. Rebecca realized she hadn't updated her son on how fundamentally their circumstances had changed since discovering Ellington's blueprints behind the peeling wallpaper. What had begun as desperate financial necessity, renovating an inherited property for quick sale, had transformed into scientific opportunity that potentially resolved their practical challenges while opening extraordinary new possibilities. "Actually, I think we might be staying," she answered, watching his expression brighten with genuine pleasure. "This house has turned out to be more special than we realized when we first moved in." Jamie nodded with the matter-of-fact acceptance children often display regarding life's unexpected turns. "I like it here, and your space telephone project is way cooler than your old job anyway." His simple assessment brought unexpected perspective to their extraordinary circumstances. Beyond the profound scientific implications and complex institutional negotiations lay the fundamental human elements. A mother creating stability for her child, finding meaningful work that utilized her capabilities, and maintaining independence amid challenging circumstances. The blueprints hidden behind wallpaper had potentially transformed understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. But they had also transformed one family's journey from financial precarity to purposeful stability, equally significant impact. At the personal scale, alongside the potentially historic scientific breakthrough. As Rebecca finalized preparations for meetings that would establish formal development frameworks for Ellington's visionary technology, she maintained this dual perspective, balancing the extraordinary scientific implications against the fundamental human elements that gave the work personal meaning beyond academic or institutional significance. The single mother who had discovered strange blueprints behind wallpaper had built something that would soon attract formal NASA attention. But more importantly, she had transformed desperate circumstances into purposeful opportunity, continuing. Scientific journey begun decades earlier while creating stability and meaning within her own life's challenging trajectory. Martin arrived at the house on Cypress Lane shortly after sunrise, his typically composed demeanor noticeably tense. Rebecca had been awake for hours, reviewing data and preparing comprehensive documentation of the communication breakthrough. "I need to see everything," Martin stated without preamble, as Rebecca led him to the dining room laboratory. His gaze swept professionally over the modified system, noting the changes she'd implemented based on Ellington's designs. For the next hour, Rebecca walked him through the progression of events, from initial pattern detection to the two-way communication exchange, culminating in the transmission of technical specifications. Martin examined the data with methodical precision, asking penetrating questions about verification protocols and system modifications. "This is beyond extraordinary," he finally acknowledged, studying the transmitted design specifications. "These modifications would create quantum entanglement capabilities far beyond current theoretical limitations. The engineering approach is, elegant isn't a strong enough word. Revolutionary might be more accurate." Rebecca nodded, having reached similar conclusions during her analysis. The question becomes, do we implement these modifications? And if so, who needs to be informed about what we're doing? Martin's expression turned grave. "That's precisely why I asked you to maintain security protocols. What you've discovered has implications far beyond academic publication or corporate development. There are organizations that monitor for exactly this type of breakthrough, particularly related to communication technologies with potential national security applications. "You're suggesting government interest?" Rebecca asked, recalling Ellington's abrupt removal from his research position after reporting similar findings. "Multiple governments, along with various agencies within each," Martin clarified. "Advanced communication technologies, particularly those with potential quantum applications, represent priority intelligence targets worldwide. Once word of this spreads, you'll face attention from organizations with varying agendas, some scientific, others focused on technological advantage or security concerns." The warning brought Ellington's experience into sharper focus, his isolation and dismissal suddenly appearing more strategic than merely skeptical. Is that what happened to Ellington? Deliberate suppression rather than scientific rejection? Martin hesitated before responding. "I can't speak with certainty about events from 3 decades ago, but established patterns suggest breakthrough technologies often face management when they emerge outside controlled channels." This sobering assessment created immediate practical concerns. Rebecca's unemployment benefits had expired weeks ago, her savings nearly depleted by essential home repairs and component purchases. The house remained in marginal condition for eventual sale, and Jamie's needs continued regardless of extraordinary scientific discoveries. "I can't simply abandon this discovery," Rebecca stated firmly, "but I also can't ignore practical realities. I'm a single mother with dwindling resources and a child to support." Martin nodded understanding. "Which brings us to necessary decisions about next steps. The scientific significance demands proper development and documentation. The practical circumstances require sustainable resources, and the security implications suggest need for appropriate protective frameworks." Their conversation was interrupted by Jamie's appearance in the doorway, sleep-tousled and curious about the early morning visitor. Rebecca made quick introductions, deliberately vague about the purpose of Martin's visit. "Is he helping with your space telephone?" Jamie asked innocently, his child's straightforward characterization cutting through technical complexity to the essential nature of the project. Martin smiled, his professional demeanor softening momentarily. "That's actually a pretty good description of what your mom has built. A very special kind of space telephone that might be able to talk to places much farther away than regular telephones." After Jamie headed to the kitchen for breakfast, Martin lowered his voice to continue their discussion. "And there's something I haven't shared about my position at Quantum Tech. While I lead the Advanced Communications Division officially, I also serve as technical liaison to certain government research initiatives, specifically programs exploring quantum communication possibilities." The revelation added new context to Martin's cautious approach and detailed knowledge. "You're saying you have official connections to programs that would be interested in this technology? Programs that have been attempting to achieve what you've accomplished here, yes," Martin confirmed, "which potentially provides a pathway that balances scientific development, practical resources, and appropriate security frameworks." His proposal outlined a carefully structured approach, formal introduction to select government researchers working on similar technologies, establishment of a classified development program with Rebecca as lead scientist, appropriate security protocols to protect both the technology and those involved, and critically, formal acknowledgement of Ellington's foundational work and Rebecca's implementation achievements. The compensation would be substantial, Martin added, addressing her immediate practical concerns. And the security classification would actually protect against corporate appropriation or patent disputes. Your role would be scientifically appropriate, leading development of technology you've already demonstrated exceptional understanding of. Rebecca considered the proposal with careful attention to both opportunities and potential constraints. Would I maintain control over research direction and implementation decisions? Within classification guidelines, yes, Martin confirmed. The interest isn't in controlling your work, but in ensuring its development occurs within frameworks that address national security considerations. Your scientific leadership is precisely what makes this opportunity valuable to the programs I'm describing. The conversation continued through morning as they discussed specific terms and conditions, potential research pathways, and practical implications for Rebecca's immediate circumstances. By noon, they had outlined a provisional agreement that balanced scientific integrity, practical necessities, and security considerations. I need a few days to arrange the appropriate introductions, Martin explained as he prepared to leave. In the meantime, continue documentation but pause any further system modifications or transmission activities. Once formal protocols are established, you'll have substantially expanded resources for implementation. After Martin's departure, Rebecca found Jamie in the living room, constructing elaborate paper airplanes from pages of her discarded notes. "Is your project going to be famous, Mom?" he asked, launching a particularly aerodynamic design across the room. The question captured the transformation occurring in their circumstances, from financial precarity to potential scientific recognition, all triggered by peeling wallpaper in an inherited Victorian house. "It might be, buddy, but more importantly, it might be really helpful for people who want to learn about the universe." "Will we still have to sell the house?" Jamie asked, his innocent question revealing awareness of their financial challenges, despite Rebecca's efforts to shield him from adult concerns. "I don't think so," she answered, realizing the truth of this statement only as she spoke it. "It seems like we might be staying here after all. How would you feel about that?" Jamie's face brightened. "I like it here. It has good hiding places, and my room has stars on the ceiling when the light comes through the window in the morning." His simple acceptance of their situation, finding value in a drafty Victorian house others might consider barely habitable, provided unexpected perspective on Rebecca's scientific breakthrough. Both represented seeing potential where others perceived only problems or limitations. The following days brought careful preparation as Rebecca organized comprehensive documentation of her findings and implementation methodology. Martin maintained regular communication, providing updates on arranged introductions and requesting specific technical information needed for preliminary briefings. 5 days after their initial discussion, Martin called with confirmation of a scheduled meeting at a government research facility located approximately 2 hours from the city. "They've arranged temporary security clearance for preliminary discussions," he explained. "The meeting includes senior researchers from the Advanced Quantum Communications Initiative, a classified program exploring technologies similar to what you've developed." The meeting was scheduled for the following morning, creating immediate logistical challenges regarding Jamie's care during her absence. Rebecca's limited social connections in the area, combined with the sensitive nature of the meeting, restricted her options significantly. "Bring your son," Martin suggested pragmatically. When she mentioned the dilemma, "The facility has appropriate accommodations for visitors accompanying cleared personnel. He can remain in supervised areas while we conduct technical discussions." This unexpected accommodation reflected the government's serious interest in her work, sufficient to overlook standard protocols regarding classified facility access. It also addressed Rebecca's reluctance to leave Jamie with unfamiliar caregivers during this critical juncture. The following morning found them driving through rural landscapes toward coordinates Martin had provided. The facility itself presented an unremarkable exterior, a sprawling single-story complex with minimal signage identifying it as Northeast Research Center without indicating governmental affiliation. Security protocols were thorough but efficiently managed, with prepared visitor credentials for both Rebecca and Jamie. As Martin had indicated, staff escorted Jamie to a surprisingly welcoming visitor area equipped with age-appropriate activities and supervision, while Rebecca proceeded to a conference room for initial introductions. The assembled research team presented an unexpected mix of disciplines: quantum physics, astrophysics, communication engineering, and computational linguistics, suggesting broader interest than merely technological applications. Dr. Eleanor Whitman, the team leader, greeted Rebecca with professional respect rather than institutional skepticism. Mr. Chen has provided preliminary briefing on your implementation of the Ellington approach, Dr. Whitman began once introductions were complete. We're particularly interested in your quantum entanglement modifications and the subsequent communication breakthrough. Perhaps you could walk us through the development progression. For the next 3 hours, Rebecca presented her findings with comprehensive technical detail, from initial discovery of Ellington's blueprints to the modified system's apparent contact with non-terrestrial intelligence. The research team engaged, with informed questions focusing on verification methodologies and technical specifications rather than challenging the fundamental claims. What's particularly significant, noted Dr. Whitman after Rebecca completed her presentation, is that your results independently confirm classified findings from 3 separate research initiatives conducted over the past 4 decades. The patterns you've detected in cosmic background radiation have been observed through different methodological approaches since the early 1980s, though never with the communication breakthrough you've achieved. This confirmation that multiple government programs had detected similar patterns without publicly acknowledging them raised immediate questions about institutional knowledge and transparency. If these patterns have been detected repeatedly, why hasn't this information been shared with the broader scientific community? Rebecca asked. Dr. Whitman's response was measured. The decision frameworks regarding such findings involve complex considerations beyond purely scientific factors. National security implications, potential societal impact assessments, and international relations all influence classification determinations. She paused before continuing. What distinguishes your achievement is not merely detecting the patterns, but establishing interactive communication, a breakthrough that simultaneously validates previous findings while creating new decision imperatives. The conversation shifted to discussion of Rebecca's received technical specifications for system modification. The research team's analysis confirmed what she had already recognized. The transmitted designs represented quantum communication capabilities far beyond current theoretical frameworks. These specifications describe what appears to be a quantum non-locality implementation that would effectively eliminate transmission delay regardless of distance, observed Dr. Raymond Chen, the team's quantum physics specialist. If functional, this would revolutionize not just communications technology, but fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics. The meeting concluded with what Dr. Whitman characterized as a provisional collaboration proposal, establishment of a dedicated research program implementing the received specifications under Rebecca's technical leadership with appropriate security protocols and substantial resource allocation. We recognize this represents significant commitment on your part, Dr. Whitman acknowledged. Beyond standard compensation considerations, we are prepared to address personal circumstances that might otherwise create implementation barriers. This oblique reference to Rebecca's financial situation and single-parent responsibilities demonstrated thorough background assessment prior to the meeting. Rather than finding such knowledge intrusive, Rebecca appreciated the practical acknowledgement of factors that would influence her decision-making. The specific terms presented exceeded her most optimistic expectations. Substantial immediate compensation addressing her financial precarity, establishment of a properly equipped laboratory facility within commuting distance of her home, formal recognition of both Ellington's foundational work and her implementation achievements, and perhaps most significantly, authority to determine research direction within classification guidelines. We're not interested in controlling this technology development, Dr. Whitman emphasized. Our priority is ensuring it occurs within appropriate security frameworks, given the potential implications. Your demonstrated capabilities make you the logical person to lead implementation. After detailed discussion of specific terms and conditions, Rebecca requested time for consideration before making formal commitment. This reasonable request was readily accommodated, with arrangements for secure communication channels to address any questions arising during her deliberation. The drive home provided opportunity for reflection, as Jamie dozed in the back seat, exhausted from his day of supervised activities at the facility. The proposed collaboration offered resolution to her immediate practical challenges while providing appropriate framework for continuing the extraordinary research Ellington had begun decades earlier. Yet something about the institutional approach troubled her, echoes of how Ellington himself had been removed from his research when reporting similar findings through official channels. The current representatives seemed genuinely committed to scientific advancement rather than suppression, but institutional priorities could shift with changing leadership or political directives. Upon returning home, Rebecca found an unexpected package on her porch, delivered during her absence, according to the timestamp on the security notification. The sender information indicated estate of Thomas Ellington, with a return address matching a legal firm in a neighboring state. Inside the carefully packed box, Rebecca discovered a sealed container holding what appeared to be journal volumes, handwritten notebooks filled with Ellington's distinctive script. A formal letter from the legal firm explained that these materials had been held in secure storage, with instructions for delivery to the current owner of the Victorian house on Cypress Lane, upon evidence of continued research. The ambiguous trigger mechanism for this delivery raised immediate questions about monitoring of her activities. Had the same surveillance systems Martin warned about detected her implementation of Ellington's designs? Or had her former caretaker maintained connection with Ellington's estate representatives, reporting her discovery of the hidden blueprints? Setting aside these concerning questions temporarily, Rebecca focused on the unexpected gift of Ellington's additional research materials. The journals contained extensive theoretical work extending beyond the blueprint specifications, including what appeared to be predictive modeling of potential communication content and philosophical frameworks for interpreting non-human communication attempts. Most significantly, the final journal volume contained what Ellington titled contingency frameworks, carefully considered approaches for managing institutional interest in his research should it ever demonstrate functional validation. His prescient analysis identified precisely the dynamics Rebecca now faced, the tension between necessary resources and potential institutional constraints. Ellington's proposed solution demonstrated characteristic innovation, strategic parallel development, maintaining both classified institutional implementation and discrete independent research, ensuring scientific integrity beyond potential classification. Constraints. This dual-path approach required careful ethical consideration, creating potential conflict between formal collaboration agreements and independent research integrity. Yet Ellington's analysis persuasively argued that maintaining scientific independence alongside institutional participation represented ethical necessity rather than contractual violation, ensuring knowledge advancement even if institutional priorities shifted toward restriction. The discovery of these additional materials profoundly influenced Rebecca's approach to the collaboration proposal. When she contacted Dr. Whitman the following day to discuss specific terms, her negotiating position included stronger provisions regarding research independence and publication pathways for non-classified aspects of the technology development. These provisions go beyond standard collaboration frameworks, Dr. Whitman noted during their discussion. May I ask, what's driving these specific concerns? Rebecca chose transparency within appropriate boundaries. Thomas Ellington's experience suggests institutional priorities can shift when transformative technologies emerge. While I'm committed to appropriate security protocols, I'm equally committed to ensuring scientific advancement continues regardless of potential policy changes. Rather than institutional resistance, her position received unexpected support. Your concerns align with scientific integrity principles the research team shares, Dr. Whitman acknowledged. We can incorporate these provisions within classification guidelines while maintaining necessary security frameworks. The expanded agreement Rebecca negotiated included establishment of a dedicated research facility within the converted carriage house on her property, providing both proximity to Jamie and appropriate security measures for classified technology. Development. The compensation package addressed both immediate financial needs and long-term security, while formal acknowledgement of Ellington's foundational contribution ensured his decades of unrecognized work would finally receive appropriate recognition. Within 3 weeks of finalizing the agreement, renovation of the carriage house began, transforming the dilapidated structure into a state-of-the-art research laboratory with security protocols meeting classified program requirements. Concurrent improvements to the main house addressed the structural and comfort issues that had initially motivated Rebecca's renovation plans, creating a properly habitable home rather than a temporary financial necessity. The implementation of the transmitted design specifications proceeded with remarkable efficiency once appropriate resources became available. Rebecca's engineering background, combined with support from the government research team, allowed rapid translation of the received technical information into functional modifications to the communication system. The quantum resonance alignment is achieving coherence levels that shouldn't be theoretically possible, observed Dr. Chen during one of the regular research team visits to the newly established laboratory. These design principles challenge fundamental assumptions about quantum entanglement limitations. Rebecca nodded agreement while monitoring system diagnostics during final calibration. The engineering approach integrates quantum principles we've only recently validated with mechanics we're still struggling to fully explain. It's as if we're implementing technology designed by someone who understands quantum physics more completely than our current theoretical frameworks. The enhanced system reached operational status exactly 2 months after Rebecca's initial contract signing. A remarkable achievement given the revolutionary nature of the technology being implemented. The first transmission using the modified specifications occurred under careful observation from both Rebecca's team and remote monitoring by the government research facility. The response came with unprecedented clarity, not merely mathematical patterns or technical specifications, but structured information that the system's translation protocols identified as language. The linguistic patterns contained recognizable mathematical foundations that provided decoding frameworks, allowing gradual interpretation of actual communication content. "We're receiving what appears to be a formal greeting and identity confirmation," Rebecca explained during the classified briefing following initial translation processing. The communication identifies the source as a monitoring outpost established specifically to detect civilizations developing quantum communication capabilities. Dr. Whitman studied the translation data with focused intensity. This suggests deliberate search rather than accidental detection. They've been waiting for someone to develop this communication method. The implications were profound. Not merely contact with non-human intelligence, but contact with an intelligence that had anticipated human technological development and established monitoring systems to detect specific advancement thresholds. The philosophical and existential questions raised by such deliberate observation extended far beyond technological considerations. As communication progressed through subsequent exchanges, a remarkable narrative emerged. The intelligence identified itself as part of a developmental observation network, maintaining monitoring outposts near thousands of potentially advancing civilizations. These outposts transmitted specific patterns through cosmic background radiation, patterns that would appear as random noise to conventional detection systems but would become recognizable to civilizations developing quantum-based communication technologies. "It's essentially a test," Rebecca explained to the research team, as translation protocols refined their interpretation capabilities. They embed patterns that only become detectable when a civilization reaches specific technological thresholds. When detection occurs, they provide advancement blueprints to establish communication capabilities for direct interaction. This deliberate developmental observation model had apparently operated for what the communications described as multiple stellar life cycles, a time frame suggesting civilization development spanning perhaps millions of years. Earth represented one of many monitored worlds that had recently achieved the quantum detection threshold, triggering the established contact protocols. The revelation transformed humanity's understanding of its cosmic position from potentially isolated intelligence to participant in what appeared to be an established developmental observation framework. The philosophical implications were as significant as the technological breakthroughs that had enabled this understanding. 6 months after establishing functional communication, Rebecca stood in the carriage house laboratory, watching as Jamie carefully examined the now expanded communication system under her supervision. The once dilapidated Victorian house had been transformed, both structurally and functionally, into a unique nexus between human civilization and a vastly more developed intelligence. "Does everyone know about your space telephone now?" Jamie asked, his innocent characterization still aptly describing the revolutionary technology despite its quantum sophistication. "Not everyone," Rebecca answered truthfully. "Some things take time for people to understand and accept, but the important people know, and they're helping us learn from it." The important people now included selected scientific leadership from multiple nations, gradually incorporated into the expanding research initiative as classification restrictions evolved to address the unprecedented circumstances. The communication technology Rebecca had developed based on Ellington's hidden blueprints had become centerpiece of humanity's first coordinated interaction with non-human intelligence. As evening approached, Rebecca walked Jamie back to the main house, now properly renovated with comfortable living spaces, replacing the marginal conditions that had greeted their arrival months earlier. The financial precarity that had driven her desperate renovation attempts had been replaced by stable resources and professional recognition beyond anything she could have imagined when first peeling away that fateful section of wallpaper. Thomas, Ellington's visionary work, hidden behind floral patterns for decades, had finally achieved the recognition he never lived to witness. The single mother struggling to support her son had become leading scientist in humanity's most significant technological breakthrough, and the peeling wallpaper that had revealed forgotten blueprints had ultimately unveiled humanity's place in a cosmos more deliberately connected than anyone had imagined. The simple woman who had found strange blueprints behind wallpaper had built something that attracted NASA scientists. But more importantly, she had implemented a vision transcending individual achievement, establishing humanity's first communication link with intelligences that had been patiently waiting for us to develop capabilities necessary for cosmic conversation. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.